Gypsy Girl, the hands of Harlem cannot hold you to its heat. Your temperature is too hot to tame, and your flaming feet there burning up the street. I am homeless, come and take me to the beat of your rattling drums. Well, if you wanna know, baby, about my fortune lying on these restless palms.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Marty Schwartz here. Marty Music. We're in the studio here in Nashville, and I have the pleasure of spending some time right now with someone that's contributed so much to music, and especially the music that I grew up listening to, whether it was with the Eurythmics, which was your own project that you're in, but also producing some of the best musicians of this last couple of generations. There's a very long list, but you could go, like we're talking about Bob Dylan, George Harrison, even No Doubt. So more modern stuff. You've kind of like dipped your toe in so many different realms of music and contributed so much. It's Dave Stewart. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much. When I first came to Nashville, it was all in this sort of mad synchrodestiny kind of.
Well, how long ago was that?
Well,
that you
it was
came here?
2010, I think. I arrived because in London, there was no flights because a volcano had erupted in, was it Finland or Iceland? And the plume of stuff that came out caused so much air traffic confusion. All planes were grounded for about a week in Europe. And so I was just stuck there. I rang up my management, who could I visit in Nashville? And they said, John McBride, Blackbird Studios, have a look at that. And that began, I made then, straight after that, a sort of trilogy of 3 albums in a row in Blackbird of my own. First one called The Blackbird Diaries. And that was my launch into Nashville. And ever since then, I've, made a lot of records here.
Yeah.
With different people. And now I spend half my time here.
Yeah, I heard where you spend your other time too. Sounds pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, when we first arrived just now, we were freezing because, I live a lot of the time, or half the time, on a tiny island, 1/2 mile by 3 mile, where I have a studio, really great studio built by Mike Cronin, who actually built Blackbird Studio.
Oh, nice.
And so it's got a nice Neve desk. You can see out the window to the port, the sea. An overdub room for drums, guitars. And, unlike a city where you drive somewhere and then you're stuck in traffic and then you've got all these other things happening, it's quite good because, I can just sort of wander into it and then wander out and then go for a walk, on the beach or whatever it is, and then come back to whatever I was doing. And so years ago, actually, Annie and I recorded in Chris Blackwell's studio in Nassau called Compass Point. And while we were there, Chris and Tina from Talking Heads were there, and Robert Palmer, who lived across the road from the studio. I loved the feeling of it, and Chris Blackwell, who, started Island Records, Island Music. He signed me when I was 19 to Island Music. I'm 72 now, so that's like...
When he signed you back then, what kind of artist were you trying to be, or what were you thinking you were going to do back then?
Well, hang on, what's 19 from 70? That's about 51 years ago, something like that. Well, what happened was how I even became a musician. I didn't have any interest in music at all. I only wanted to play soccer, or we call it football in England, but
Of course.
you guys kind of
We
stole it.
apologize for that.
Yeah, over and over and over. I just wanted to play for my town, Sunderland, up in the northeast of England. And I played for the school, and I played another team on a Saturday, and that's all I did. My brother was about 4 or 5 years older, and he'd been to see the Beatles play live in Sunderland at the Sunderland Empire, and he had a couple of records he'd bought. I just wasn't interested. And then this kid broke my knee in several places, and I had an operation on that. And the same month, my mother left my father. You know, my brother went to college. I'm on my own in the house with my knee in plaster. I was told I might be able to play in a year, which, you know, when you're about 14, you're like, a year.
That feels like forever.
Yeah, so I was looking for anything to do, basically. And the doorbell rang, and it was a postman. And my cousin from Sunderland, who was about 9 years older, had managed to get to Memphis, and he's still there today. And he had sent a box, and in that box was 2 pair of Levi corduroys, which I'd never seen before in my life. And then under that, he had put 2 blues albums. You know, it was like a really out of the blue kind of, I don't know, like some magic thing happened, because I had nothing to do. So I took this blues album and put it on the record player that my dad had made, a homemade record player. And I sat on the sofa, and at first I didn't understand it was music. It was Robert Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of this wailing kind of, and I think I went into a kind of trance or something. And that's why, coming back to talking about when I produced the film Deep Blues, I went all the way back to Mississippi, Delta Blues, filmed all these Delta Blues singers with Robert Palmer, who's passed away now. Not Robert Palmer, the singer, Robert Palmer, the New York Times and Rolling Stone music journalist who has written a book called Deep Blues. He was an amazing authority on blues music.
This is you discovering music, but then what was the first kind of thing you learned on guitar?
Well, yes.
Did someone have to show you?
Well, what happened was I heard this sort of blues music. I didn't really understand what I was listening to, but I went into the kitchen and put on the radio. Now, you know, because of my age, it was unbelievable time for me, because, you know, I was like 14, it was 1966. So coming out the radio was the Kinks, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. And I was hearing in all of them a little bit of this blues music. So it was like my sort of, you know, big light bulb went off. And I realized my brother had a guitar in his wardrobe with about 5 strings on it. Oh, it might have been the one my grandmother gave him or something. And I hobbled about, got that guitar, and just started to try and play on one note, you know, like trying to find a blues note. And I could find, it was this. That was basically, you know, that's me going for about 3 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
Then I realized you could go.
Yeah.
But then I didn't know really what else to do. I didn't even know how to tune it.
Right.
But it's an interesting story. Is next door but one was a lovely man called Mr. Gibson. And he'd been captured during the war and put in a prisoner of war camp by the Japanese and tortured. And I think 1,000 men went there and only 19 came back or something. He was one of them.
Wow.
He had made a sort of homemade kind of weird guitar out of bits of wood and floorboards and bits of wire, fuse wire or something, while he was a prisoner of war, to try and cheer up the guys, you know. And then he learnt some Japanese songs just so that they wouldn't kill him, you know.
Yeah.
And so I went round to see him. He showed me how to play some things. What I didn't realize was he didn't really tune his guitar like a guitar. So I'd been learning with this tuning, and then one of my brother's friends when they came back from college, said, "Oh, this guitar's all out of tune," and like tuned it up. And I was like, "Oh, fuck. I have to learn the whole thing again." Later on, years later, after Eurythmics stopped, after about 8 albums, we had a break. And I thought, right, I'm going to go and get a film made about this blues music that came from the Delta. And then Robert Palmer had written this book called Deep Blues. And my brother, who was now helping produce videos in England and everything, and a great girl that worked for me called Eileen, they went and investigated, and to try and get to meet these people. Back then it was like, well, he'll be at the post office on Thursday at 4 o'clock. So they'd be there waiting, and then, oh no, he decided not to come. And so the setup was hard. But then we actually managed. It's a great film, actually, and directed by Robert Muggy, who's
Deep Blues.
Deep Blues. And yeah, you can get it now on, I don't know, Apple.
Different platforms.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the first bit of filming we did I didn't really want to be in it, but none of the distributors at the time were like, we don't know any of these names of people, Jessie May Hemphill, R.L. Burnside, so I'm in it for a tiny bit just to get it made into a DVD, you know. And so I walked up towards R.L. Burnside's cabin, and he had lots of kids there, and his wife, and he was teaching me a song called Jumper on the Line. So I was watching him play, and it was great because it was just how I sort of imagined. And yeah, he was just playing this rhythm. I go. Then he would just stop dead and sing, well, then. And sometimes instead of singing it, he would play. But it wouldn't necessarily be in a timing.
Right.
When he played the lead bit. But when
was
he
it
went
based
back
more
to
on whatever he was like singing?
Whatever he was singing, but when he went back to the rhythm, it was. And that was totally in time. Now, hearing that and in situ, you know, with him sitting on the front porch of his cabin, it was just like a whole full circle from when I was on the couch with my leg broken and that record and me being in this kind of trance. In a way, it was a kind of magical thing because it changed my life forever.
Yeah.
And I got obsessed with the guitar, so much so that my dad got really worried because it was just me and my dad in the house. And I was doing it like 8-9 hours a day. And he thought because I was only 14, he thought one side of my chest had sort of sunk in a bit. So he took me to the doctor. And the doctor said, well, take your shirt off and all. And he was looking at my chest and he turned around to my dad and he said, no, it'll be all right. But, you know, once you start learning something and you start to get it, and especially as I had not really been listening to music, and suddenly I was, oh my God, the Kinks. And then I'm trying to learn all the Kinks songs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Did you sit and actually learn like Beatles songs and Kinks songs and stuff like that?
Yeah, all of that kind of thing. And but see, when I was 18 or something like that, or 19 maybe, as I said, I got signed by Island Music, and then my little band from Sunderland, where we'd only played in a folk club, got signed by Elton John.
Okay.
In London he'd started a brand new record label called Rocket Records. So we were like thrown in the deep end, and we were supporting Elton John in Italy and cycles arenas and all over. So it was too much too soon, one of those classic things, you know. He was really generous, lovely guy, and gave the band an advance. And I went out and bought guitars down Denmark Street and 1,000 capsules of mescaline and about a pound slab of hashish from Morocco. And the band, you know, we just like had this rented house in Tottenham in London, and we all were just stoned and completely, you know,
tripping out.
Yeah, so he sent round this guy called Ian Matthews from Ian Matthews Southern Comfort to sort of try and get us, you know, to say, no, these kids are like they're all over the place. So we went in the studio with him and we made one record, and then one guy in the band sort of left, and so the whole thing kind of fell apart. And I thought, well, that must be it then. That's the music part of my life or business over. I'll just go back to sort of learning and playing other songs. At the same time as I was learning blues, my brother had the first two Bob Dylan albums. So I was, after a while, I was starting to sort of, I want to learn finger picking. And then I had a Mississippi John Hurt album, and he was like, so I loved learning that style, and then I realized, Bob Dylan's playing this finger style thing, and I was learning that. And I started singing and playing Bob Dylan songs, which is another full circle. Is this album that's coming out on Record Store Day. In between us doing other stuff in the studio, I'd just stick an iPhone on a stick, and I was just playing what I was playing in the folk club just for fun. And it turned out that people said, hey, that should be a record. So it's coming out on vinyl.
So this is a Dave Does Dylan.
Yeah.
And so you were talking, you had an iPhone and recorded yourself doing takes of these songs?
Yeah, I can just the phone there, and I'm singing and playing the song. And I would post them on Instagram, and some people started saying, I love this. I'd like to have an album like this or whatever. And then my management said, well, why don't we do one vinyl? So this is it. And on the back, there's a quote by Dylan. And on the back, there's this is me in the middle of filming Bob, a song called Blood in My Eyes, there was only the two of us. We didn't have any help. So I've got two 8mm cine cameras. It's quite a funny story. We forgot to get any, people like bodyguard. So it's me and Bob Dylan walking around in London, in Camden Town. It just started to get a whole load of people walking beside us or behind Bob, and I'm filming. So I just made them part of the video as well. But I needed something to cut to, because otherwise you get a jump cut of So I saw my brother-in-law coming down the street, and I went, oh my God, quick, get hold of this 8mm cine camera and film Bob this way just for a bit. And he only filmed for a tiny bit, and he said, oh, listen, I have to go. I'm getting some towels from my mum's kitchen floor. And I said, what? So I was back to me again with two cameras. But it's a funny story. The first kind of songs I was learning was things like this. Now, I might not be playing the right chords or the same chords as Bob, but I was Gypsy Girl, the hands of Harlem cannot hold you to its heat. Your temperature is too hot to tame, and your flaming feet there burning up the street. I am homeless, come and take me to the beat of your rattling drums. Well, if you want to know, baby, about my fortune, lying on these restless palms. So when I was a kid, I would turn up at a folk club and sing a song like that, but I looked about 12. So, and I was about 15 or 16, and they wouldn't let me in at first. And then this sweet guy, this is up in Sunderland, northeast of England, where in the folk club, most people were singing with one hand in their ear and singing, well, when the coal mine come, And I come in and I'm going, well, ain't no use to sit down and wonder why, babe. Even you don't know by now. Ain't no use to sit down and wonder why, babe. It don't matter anyhow. When the rooster crows at the break of dawn, look out your window and I'll be gone. You're the reason I'm traveling on, but don't think twice, 'cause it's alright. And they would be like, what? It's like 12-year-old kid this stuff. But so it really is full circle, you know, like
Amazing.
from when I was that kid listening and playing those Bob Dylan songs to actually doing it on, you know, I was just doing it actually for fun. Jesse was busy changing something in the control room, and I'm just going to do this for a second. And then it became, I started to do more and more. In fact, I chopped it down to 14 on the vinyl album. But
once again, just letting it happen, not trying.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. How does blues guitar influenced the 60s rock? How does that turn into like the Eurythmics, for instance, which is more like kind of like that classic original like synth pop?
Well, yeah.
What's the evolution of that? Did you learn piano and take piano lessons? Or was that just your musical inside figuring it out by just noodling around and kind of using your musical instincts?
Well, Annie and I, before Eurythmics, we played in a band. We lived together and played in a band called The Tourists. We didn't write any songs while we lived together, not one separately or together. This other guy wrote all the songs, Pete, and I played electric guitar and Rickenbacker 12-string and 6-string, and Annie was playing like keyboards and singing as well. The Eurythmics sort of sound came about, say, take Sweet Dreams, for instance, was we'd made another album before that as Eurythmics in Germany with Connie Plank, who produced Kraftwerk and Devo. And
love that, yeah.
And he taught me a lot of stuff. And there was one thing in his studio I was nuts about. It was called an ARP Odyssey.
Yep.
The very early synth with the little pink and yellow and you know, I was playing with that, and I had to have like a major operation. In fact, I nearly died on there during the operation. And when I woke up from that, I had this like epiphany, and I thought, I'm not going to play the guitar. I'm going to do something completely unique. And when I was recovering in my bedroom, I had these tiny little sort of drum machine synthesizer, you know, like whatever there was available at the time. And I had a little 4-track tape recorder, and I made probably half of the Sweet Dreams album feeling backing tracks in my bedroom. Annie was on holiday with her. She'd gone to sort of stay with her parents in Scotland for a bit in Aberdeen. And I rang her up on the telephone and said, hey, listen to this. And I was playing, you know, like dom, 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 growling sort of synthesizer bass and drum beat. And it was kind of blues. You see, Sweet Dreams is a kind of blues. It's just reimagined or reinterpreted into, but it's going around the same thing all the time. And it's got this kind of minor key feeling. So on stage, save the sequencer or whatever, or the band is playing it. So it's really that. Then all it does is, and it doesn't really change much at all. In fact, even when it goes to the instrumental, it's still the same chords. The instruments on it were, you know, this mad drum computer this guy just invented that. I had to sort of sleep on the floor. My friend Adam, who helped us understand what equipment to get, and this guy was still building this drum computer. So that's why in the video it looks like it is the computer with wood around it. And it has like a hospital health monitor where you couldn't program it in the normal way. It had a sync code that hit one of the tracks on the 8-track tape recorder that made it start up. And then if everything was in time with that, I did all sorts of tricks to make things in time because, there wasn't MIDI. So I would trigger a synthesizer from a hi-hat from the drum machine. So every time it opened, the noise gate would open a second and let the synthesizer through and then patch that to another track. So it would make like dun 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 or dun 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 dun. It's completely crazy how we made it. I mean, in the middle of Sweet Dreams, actually, Annie and I wanted to have this sound while we did this section like hold your head up, keep your head up.
Of course.
And it's me and Annie playing, sort of milk bottles with the water poured out till we got it in tune with do-do-do-do-do-do-do. So, and then the rest of the album, actually, I am playing guitar. Like The City Never Sleeps, I went and recorded on a little portable tape recorder down in the underground, on the subway, as you would say in America. The trains coming in and the sort of squeaking of the wheels. And then I sort of got the key of the squeaking a bit and then played this kind of slide guitar. And yeah, there's all sorts of instruments on the album. Everybody thinks it's like, because Sweet Dreams was such a huge hit, everybody thinks it's like an electronic album. Well, it's a mixture of stuff.
I think of you on guitar, though, like even back then, during that time.
Yeah, well, on stage, obviously, I would play the first time we went out on stage, I had a guitar that was a 6-string and a bass double neck, all on one instrument. And I thought, well, I need to also play the keyboard and I also need to hit these pedals. So I thought, oh, what should I do? So then I had this idea of having, like what you're using for your lights here, sort of a stand that went up and across. And then I had a piece of fisherman's sort of
wire string,
like see-through, you see, so that it tied up there and it hung the guitar from it because it was weighted on the other side.
Okay.
But for the audience, it was wild because you couldn't see the thread. And then I could turn around and just let go of it, and it was just hanging there. And I'd play the SH-101 or what little synthesizer we had, and turn around and pick up the guitar again. And then Adam had the mixing desk on stage, and we had like space echo delay and stuff, and he could like do kind of dub versions of what we were doing and put a long delay on Annie, and it would come back and she'd sing a harmony with herself. Well, a lot of people thought we were miming because there was no out front mixer. There was just this perfect sound coming out, and of course it didn't look real.
Right.
It was just people were like looking at us.
But it was
like,
delay that was looping through.
We had delays going, and we'd let the delay go into sort of distortion, with a taped echo, so echoplex or a space echo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Peter would just stare at us like we were crazy. And we actually played Sweet Dreams live to an audience of 4 on New Year's Eve, 200 miles away from where we lived. And on the way back, it was snowing, and we got and it was a really sort of like one of those moments where Annie was like, oh, we need to give up. It's not working. And literally 3 months later or something, we were like going towards being number 1 in America.
Amazing.
Yeah, crazy. Years ago, I was doing a Dutch film score. They didn't have any money, but I liked the film. I said, that's all right. I'll do the music. I'll just put the music out. You have the music in the film. And then this guy, Ben Verbong, the director of the film, so I just heard this girl play the saxophone in a club. She must only be about 17 or 18. She was amazing. I said, oh, well, send her over to England and then we'll have a Dutch artist, and so she was called Candy Dulfer. So I then, at the end of the movie, which is a very dark movie, did a sort of title track. So I made this tune up and I said to Candy, I said, just, you play exactly what I'm playing on the saxophone, and then we'll do a thing in the middle like a solo, and then to that. So it went there. Can you just play? So first I just played those chords in on a synth, you know, on a beat. Then I went 1, 2, 3, 4. Now change. So just the same thing, and then anyway, yeah. So I do this, and she answers it. She's a brilliant player, and I said to her, "You can have 50% of the, master for that." So because I'd written the tune basically, and then I said, "You know what? This is a very catchy thing." So I told the label, "You should put this out. This is a young Dutch sax player in Holland, And of course, they were instrumentals. You don't know. This is like, nobody plays instrumentals on the pop radio or anything. I said, well, I'm telling you. Anyway, it went on to be like a hit all around the world and 8 weeks at #1. And then she bought a house in Amsterdam. And now, I hadn't worked the tune out. It was the first thing that came in my head. It's like 4 notes, basically. Now, the interesting thing for me always about writing songs and music is, why do those 4 notes resonate with people against those chords, Now, if I was to play that anywhere on stage, anywhere in the world, I play the first 4 notes and the audience go, oh, but it's the simplest thing ever.
Yeah.
It's like that Kiss, keep it simple, stupid, Or Tom Petty was always saying, don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Yep.
And what makes the fact that when George has gone, all of us go, oh, yeah. And any song that you can play, like a Prince song, When Doves Cry or whatever. Prince saw Candy Dulfer playing, and she came to my studio in LA and she got a message, and then Prince wanted to meet her, and the next thing I knew, she was playing with Prince, and she slides through his legs on the Batman thing, and when I want sex, I ask for candy, and now she's one of the most famous sax players out there. But the thing about songwriting, and people often, when I'm doing an interview and they're talking about songwriting, well, how did this song come about? How did this song come about? Like underneath it all was No Doubt, which was the #1 which I wrote with Gwen, or songs Old Habits Die Hard with Mick, which won the Golden Globe.
I also love, because I was just teaching it, is Don't Come Around Here No More.
Yeah.
And were you playing a
choral sitar guitar. That song, see, there's a lot of, it's funny how many different stories come out about something, and, they become embedded into, like, they look like facts because somebody's written it. But the real story of that song is, I had got my little 4-track studio everywhere in the hotel room. Annie and I think we just got the news in San Francisco that we were #1 in America. And I'd bought this choral sitar guitar to celebrate. And, it was like, damn, I was in my hotel room in San Francisco, and I had my little bass synthesizer and a drum machine, and I wrote the whole thing from beginning to end, including singing Don't Come Around Here No More, and all the down, 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 and then the whole vibe, where it's going dong, dong, and just the whole thing was finished. When I was at the studio with Jimmy Iovine, he'd heard it, and he said, "Oh, look, I'm making a Stevie Nicks album." She was coming down, and he's saying, "This is a hit, just hearing it like that.
Yeah.
It should be great for Stevie." But I didn't know that she was, Jimmy and her had been living together.
Right.
And
right.
also she was a bit angry with him about something. So she was instead, reciting Shakespeare over it or whatever. So anyway, she went away for a bit. And then Jimmy said, "I know, let's ring this guy, Tom Petty." I'd never met him before in my life. But I loved him because during the punk period in Britain and just after, you see, he was one of the artists that had this great sound with a jangling 12 strings, which I told you I'd been playing in this other band, with American Girl and all that kind of, living like a refugee, actually it was. And so I said, okay. So Tom Petty came down, heard this track. Me and him got on really good, and he heard the whole thing, and he started playing around with the verses. And he said, "Oh, this is really good. Let's go to my place." So we went there, and he had a studio in his garage. And that's how the whole thing came about. So we were in his garage, and then the band, who were really confused because they were making Southern accents. I had no idea they were making Southern accents. I was just, I'd only just met these people in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I'd already been making this track in San Francisco. But then it was hard to recreate that track. So they just put the 4-track onto the tape machine. And then Tom was singing it. And then the band were like, "What do we do?" So, and I was like, "Well, why don't we go double speed at the end?" And then the band come in.
Rock out, yeah.
Mike Campbell rock out on the guitar. And that all happened. And then there was a great, it all just happened really quickly. A great director, Jeff, he heard it, was, "Oh yeah," and he came up with this idea, a Mad Hatter's Tea Party, and then it turned into this epic video. And then
you're in the video.
I'm in the video on top of the mushroom.
With like a hookah?
Yeah, I'm with a hookah pipe, and I'm sitting on top of a giant sort of...
Alice in Wonderland mushroom.
Exactly, with Alice climbing up the other mushrooms, which takes me back to the beginning of when, with Elton and the, the mushrooms and the psilocybin and mescaline. So Tom's really into this because it's totally wild looking.
Yeah.
And he was actually in a really dark place, and he was kind of stuck with his album, and there was things going wrong in his life. And this kind of was like a different world. It kind of blew his mind in a certain way, and we had great fun, and I was having great fun with the band and with Benmont, and I was listening to songs he was writing, and Mike Campbell. I loved them all, Stan Lynch and Howie. They were all an incredible bunch. And so when that video came out, it got banned because of slicing Alice. That was a cake, actually. Yep. You could see it was a cake, but they were eating the cake, but then they were like, "You can't, kids are crying at home watching MTV." No, it's true.
Yeah. No, well, how your generation can remember, all those details, like when the Beatles, in America, the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, people remember where they were. It's totally imprinted in their DNA. That's how because of my age, Don't Come Around Here No More video, that's how it is for me. You don't have to, we're making a video, but I can see every single thing you said. I've seen that video so many times, and I've seen Tom Petty live so many times. He's one of my favorite artists, for sure. So it's just fun to hear it from you.
Yeah, well, Tom and I had this very similar, and as did George. Well, how the Wilburys ended up making their album in my house in the back garden was George and Olivia, his wife, and Danny, their son, was living in my house in LA, and I was staying in his house in England, and I was about to go on tour with Eurythmics. So Jeff Lynne had already been coming around my house and playing tennis with this friend of mine, a scriptwriter, and then I'd been working with Tom, and I'd also been filming Bob Dylan. So it was like a coming together of these characters. And then I'm looking out my bedroom window and I'm sitting around the tree I might as well be on mescaline because it's Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, and George Harrison sitting under my tree, which you can see the picture if you Google Traveling Wilburys. There's about 3 pictures, and they're either in my house or the back garden. Whatever it is, and the question you asked, well, when you meet these people later on in life, I can't even explain how it happened. These things were just popping up. I don't think maybe it's the mescaline wore off.
I was going to say, it's so funny because I was just about to say, is this a mescaline flashback or is Roy Orbison and George Harrison?
I'm here talking to you, yeah. But there was lots of American music that once I got to America, and you see in the northeast of England, and Annie also was obsessed with R&B and Motown, so
she's very sounds very
soulful, yeah. So by the time we, had a hit on our second album, I could just open up a whole, load of this is going to be maybe a bit loud, but like or anything, like
yeah,
and then it's
they sound like Motown inspired.
Yeah. And so, that's a song called We 201, but we could open up the Pandora's box, basically. Yeah. And I was listening to and the Isley Brothers and all of the influences that I've been listening to. I was going, oh, well, look, Annie and I, we can do whatever we want. So on Here Comes the Rain Again, which is on the second album, it was like, we can have a whole orchestra playing, and interesting sort of how things come about. It wasn't that, let's book this orchestral arranger to write. It was like basically I met this chap by chance through my ex-wife, who I'm still friends with, my first wife. And I said, I was thinking about having some strings on this track, and I was playing them like, and so he was actually in bed at the time, and he was like having a cup of tea. So he was like, oh, what kind of strings were you thinking? I didn't know anything about orchestra. I said, I don't know. I named all these different, let's have 10 of them and 20 of them. And he was kind of laughing and goes, well, hang on a minute, it doesn't quite work out like that. He's called Michael Kamen, who was beginning to become a famous orchestrator, arranger. Sadly passed away now, but he came up with this brilliant arrangement with the pizzicato strings at the beginning.
Yep.
So I invited him to come and put these strings on, and I just managed to get this place to Church Studios. Honestly, my life is so insane. Like when Annie and I were kicked out of this picture framing factory because we couldn't afford £8 a week to the guy, we hadn't finished Sweet Dreams album yet. So I was walking up the street in London in a place called Crouch End, where the famous Church Studios is, which wasn't at the time. And a guy just leaned out the door and went, hey, come here, this guy with a white beard. And he looked like something out of The Hobbit, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what? And he said, and he went, are you looking for somewhere? And I said, oh, yeah, actually, and I explained, he didn't know what I was talking about recording. He just said, well, you can have this room here. And I said, well, we don't really have any money. He said, it doesn't matter. You can have for nothing. So it was what you call the vestry, where in the church the priests would hang their clothes. So it was tiny, and that's where we finished the Sweet Dreams album.
Wow.
And but then when they realized what we were doing in this little room, him and his friend who owned the church, they were making animated film upstairs. They said, oh, we can build you something better than that. So for no money, during the night, they had these lights, shining, and they built sort of an extension onto the big church hall and just gave it to us. And in the end, they wanted to retire. They were older. And so I bought the church, or Annie and I bought the church off them, which is now, it's everybody's recorded there. Adele, U2. I was just talking to Ben from Mumford and Sons. He said that's where we made this album. But at the time, it was a church, a great big long stone old church. And so can you imagine, just weird, this guy just leaning out the door and saying, "Oh, you're looking for somewhere? And then here, you can have this for nothing." Again, it was like a magic. Like, why did he say that? Why did he do that? Why did he think I was looking for somewhere as I was walking along the street, And so many things have happened like that, and still are, It's I have no explanation.
Yeah, probably the less you think about it, it's probably better for those manifestations to happen. Like you just completely don't think or try to do these things.
Well, I think part of the thing is allowing things to happen, right? So now going back to songwriting, I often love the mistake, so allowing mistakes to happen. So any songwriting thing I'm in with people, and sometimes I work with really young artists just because I like them and understand that, there are no rules. Stevie Nicks says it when we were working together. She said, she realised, hang on, there's no rules here with Dave, so we can do whatever we want. So if I was going like, and then I play a diminished chord, now somebody might go, "Oh, well, that's a bit weird." But then I go, maybe not, George would call it the naughty chord, right? But then I've used that quite a lot, but you wouldn't know I was doing that, because maybe then I take the diminished away, just have the bass play that and something else, and it hints at this thing. And so the whole fact of allowing stuff to happen is basically you have no control.
So releasing the trying to control.
Relinquishing control and allowing stuff to happen, because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. I'm talking about in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
You allow all the stuff to happen, and then, I always talk about, attitude and gratitude. So, okay, all this stuff's going on, and you can see it all. Again, it's like looking at magic numbers or something. You can see it all and go, I see all this stuff's happening, but I really like this stuff over here. And that's my approach to songwriting. I don't write anything down, and I just sing the words out in one go. Now, there might be some words I need to fix, or half of it is, but half of it or more is finished, basically. But I don't know where those words are coming from.
Right.
And I have to then sometimes later work out what that was about.
That's related to the relinquishing control.
Yeah. I don't care if I make a mistake or fuck up or whatever, And when I've worked with Mick Jagger or people like that, very similar. So me and Mick, I've got loads of tapes of me and Mick. We're playing and Mick's singing. Some words are coming out that are amazing, and some of it's just kind of gobbledygook, gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
But he isn't thinking about it, and then he just hits on, and then there's certain lines where you're going, that's where the song's going, or that's what it's about. And a lot of songwriters do this, It's just that getting that space between your thoughts, like not trying to sort of control your mind to think, I must write about this.
Dave Stewart, thank you so much, man, for spending time here. You've got your new Dave Does Dylan album. We'll also just leave links down for people to just, see what you're up to.
Sure.
It's been magical for me. It's been a great moment to spend some time with someone that I've, that kind of helped shape what I'm doing too. So thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you
so much, man.
Cheers.
It's been so cool.